Howdy, folks. So, the questions that I had this week were effectively what other types of micronutrients might female athletes be deficient in? And the other is as far as what do we or how do antioxidants affect elite athletes in terms of recovery? So, to first answer what could be deficient, well, first and foremost, remember, guys, when we're painting in broad strokes, never forget the individual. So, you still need to assess what your individual is taking in nutritionally on a daily basis and try to figure out if there's a certain pattern of deficiency in intake. Now, for most of your female athletes, it turns out you're going to have an increased risk of possibly not getting enough calcium, vitamin D, and iron. Now, iron being the biggest one to really pay attention to, but then within that, there's so much inter-individual variability. Because if you have a female athlete that pretty much enjoys trying to eat as much red meat as humanly possible and enjoys combining that with vitamin C or citrus fruits, they're probably going to be okay. But if you have a female athlete that's vegetarian, that also avoids pretty much every single source of iron you could get from plant based or supplementation, you're going to have some issues. If you have an athlete that's in playing a lot of sports indoors and they're not taking in foods that are vitamin D fortified or things like mushrooms that are going to naturally have some vitamin D occurring, you're going to have some issues. So just staying on top of what your athlete's normal intake is, and then once again where deficiencies might happen. And this is going to be a bigger issue with your much smaller athletes that are naturally, or for lack of a term, unnaturally doing much lower intakes because perhaps in their sport there is a lot of pressure for them to remain small. And because of that lower caloric intake, even if they're doing a good job eating a variety of foods in their diet, they might still find themselves deficient in some vitamin minerals over the long term. Plus, keeping in mind, if an athlete is performing sports that are very metabolically taxing or just require a lot of work in general, they're going to naturally be going through a number of micronutrients a lot faster, specifically when we talk about electrolytes, if you're sweating a lot. Now, as far as antioxidant supplementation, remember we do produce those reactive oxidative species and reactive nitrogenous species to a lesser extent when we do really hard training. Now, these, when running amok, are really bad for the body, can do a lot of damage to a lot of cells and systems inside of the body pretty quickly. But we do want a certain amount of them because a certain amount of them is going to help us signal for building up more of the endogenous antioxidants along with signaling for things like increasing mitochondrial health and size, etc. So it's not that we necessarily want to make sure that we don't take in any antioxidants. We still want to make sure we're taking enough because it turns out they're also incorporated into other processes in the body, like vitamin C and collagen production. But we also want to make sure that we're not perhaps going overboard. So we don't necessarily need a mega dose with any of those, like taking some type of massive multivitamin or multiple doses. Instead, once again, paying attention to the individual. How are they responding? How are they recovering from their training? And making sure that we're meeting their demands and we're not trying to go too far above and beyond. Because just like with the macronutrients, it's great to have them take enough carbohydrates to support their exercise and keep their performance level up. But if we 2x, 3x, 4x their carbohydrate intake, all we're going to do is help them gain body fat. We're not going to really help enhance their performance that much after we've topped off those glycogen stores on a daily basis. So, keeping in mind that the other problem is whenever it comes to elite athletes, it's really hard to get access to them and do good research on them to see how they are going to respond to this type of supplementation. So based on what's been done in the recreationally trained and the little bit more aggressively training individual, we've got some ideas that it's probably not beneficial and potentially it's going to be detrimental. But notice that we're not speaking in absolutes because, like anything else, science is rarely settled. And specifically, when we're talking about very specific populations that are high performing, it's really hard to get access to those. You're not going to be able to get a professional soccer team to try your dietary intervention, especially if you're trying to tell their general manager, by the way, this might actually cause a decrease in performance and increased risk of injury, but it's for science. So, anyways, guys, hope this helps. Have yourselves a great week. Bye bye.